So for this next video, possibly the last, I'm going to try to put one of these textures into repeat that has a feeling of pattern, just so that I can show you it's a little bit more difficult than an all-over abstract texture. So I mean, they're all kind of going to be tricky, but let me work with one that's really obvious. I'll work with the top middle. If you work with a texture like this, you basically spend a lot of time feeling limited by having to continue the repeat, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. So I've put it on its new file, and I'm going to make the canvas size bigger so I can see what I'm doing here. And in this case, I think I'm going to adjust the levels so that it is really clear like what the marks are that I'm trying to retain. And then I'm also going to adjust the threshold so that I can see it. So it's going to be interesting. Guides are really helpful when you're working with something that has a pattern in it, so you can see how off it is. So the first thing I did was bring a guide down so that I can rotate this artwork and have it line up perfectly. And rotating it, edit, transform, I'm going to make sure the nearest neighbor's on because I've already adjusted the threshold and I don't want to add any grayscale. If I hadn't done the threshold yet, I probably wouldn't bother checking that. So I'm thinking, pull another guide down, thinking this might be correct here. Sometimes it won't just be able to rotate into place. Sometimes you have to actually warp it. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to go back to transforming, Command T on my keyboard, and actually go up to this warp tool here. What the warp tool does is it drops on a grid that allows me to move areas of this separately. So I could sort of nudge things into alignment that might not have been aligned just from rotating. You can see, hopefully in your video, that it's adding some grayscale to it. So I'm going to have to threshold this image at the end just to make sure I don't lose anything. So I'm going to clear my guides, and basically I'm going to clear out the background. So remember I had said before, there's a white background here. I don't really need it, so I'm selecting it and deleting it. And my background is white, so I can see what it's going to look like when I'm done. I'm just going to pull down a guide to the top of this and duplicate and see if I get lucky on how it lines up. And you can see here that it's still not quite aligned. So because it's not aligned, I'm not going to be able to line up those two circles. So it makes sense for me to go back and tweak it back a little bit and hope that that does the trick. So I rotated it back, trying to make up the difference, and it looks like that's better. You can see how the lines continue now. And I'm going to leave it, that's as good as I'm going to try and get right now. So by lining it up, I'm also overlapping it, and we talked about how you can make one layer less opaque so that you can see where it's overlapping. And I think I might just leave the overlap as it is, maybe clean it up a little bit here by deleting away some of it so that I don't have a really thick line there, for instance. Something like this is probably going to show up really extremely when I put this into repeat, but I can fix that after I got my repeat unit. So I've basically checked it and also done the horizontal repeat here. I'm going to merge those two layers together, and now I'm going to duplicate it again. And I have to use the guide for this because if I don't use the guide, I don't know how to line it up. So I'm going backwards to the guide here. If I line it up like this, it's not going to repeat. If I line it up like this, it's not going to repeat. I have to line it up perfectly beneath. Oh, I think I got lucky on this pattern because it's lining up really nicely. So I could overlap it if I want it to be denser, or if I don't care about that fade or I want to fill it in manually, I can do something like that. I think I'm going to overlap it and erase it I'm sorry, select it and delete it. I think that's going to look better in the end. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Merging these two layers together, I'm going to crop out the repeat. I could have done all of this with that upper left-hand corner action if I wanted to, but the guides are like an upper left-hand corner right now. So I'm selecting this new layer via copy, and I'm going to move this over and see where my repeat ends. And while I'm at it, I'm going to see where my repeat ends here. Okay. You can see it's not lining up, so I can't just assume it's in place. I have to make sure it's in place. And you can see it's a very small repeat now. It's just that little box. Selecting that out. I'm going to crop this whole thing. And in the last video, I did the thing where I used the offset filter to check different things, and I'm going to do it here as well. But there's areas here where I could, right off the bat, thin it out a little bit based on what I'm seeing. So I'm just opening it up so that those super dark lines aren't obvious. The fact that these two circles aren't lining up perfectly is going to drive me crazy, so I'm going to fix that too. I'm just going to select that, and using the arrow key on the keyboard, just scooch them down a little bit, and maybe over a little bit, and then fill in some of the areas here with little black connection. So, you know, how you approach this is how you approach this, and what your threshold for success is totally up to you. I'm going to try not to be too OCD about it. So after I've corrected this area, I really want to correct this, but I don't want to mess up the join line. So I'm going to go to Filter, Other, Offset, and bump everything up a little bit so you can see that's the area that I want to fix. And I just have to center it so that I can see it. And I'm going to go in and kind of mimic what's happening here by opening it up, doing this and that, and hit delete on the keyboard. I might take this and move it up a little to make up that difference and fill that in. I'm feeling pretty good about this as a texture, and I don't want to over clean it because, I don't want to over clean it because it will start to create problems, like some areas are too clean and some aren't. So I'm going to leave it alone here, and then I'm going to step it out to see how it looks. So image canvas size, 200% by 200%, and let's see. Pretty good. Yeah, looks pretty good. I mean, there's things I could focus on, but I think as a texture all over, it looks pretty resolved, and I'm going to move on to stepping it out for the screen size. So obviously I would save this as a 2x2 repeat. Now I'm going to make my canvas size 12 by 15, which is the size that we have decided will fit on the screen. And I'm going to bring this up here. See if I can get 2 repeats in. I can get 2 repeats in, and because this is 2 repeats, I might be able to get another half of a repeat in there. I'm going to see vertically. And can I get one more? I think I can. There you go. So I can get one more here, and I'm not going to risk adding this other side on. I just don't feel like it is necessary because it's going to be really, really tight. It's already kind of tight on the vertical. So I'm going to leave it alone and merge these together, move them into the center as much as I can. I would add a layer and put my registration marks on there. And don't forget the jog line. So this one is a little trickier. So I'm going to go in and sort of point out with my clunky drawing tool what kind of a jog line I'm going to have to do here. I can't avoid going through motifs. So instead of avoiding going through motifs, I'm going to try to go through the thinnest parts of the design. And this is another reason why it's good that I didn't go too wide, because I might have to do more of a zigzag here than I would have on a different kind of repeat, which means that when I reverse the two sides, it's going to end up looking wider. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as quickly as I can with a lasso so you can see what I mean. So I'm trying to go through these thinner areas, and also the movement of going zigzag is going to help me when I try to line it up, because they won't, if I make a mistake, it won't have that mistake in a continuous straight line. It'll have it happening sometimes in one place and sometimes in another. So just trying to do this somewhat quickly. Get a little jog in there, out here, and get to the end so that I can do the reverse, and you can see what I'm talking about with the wider zigzag. So, oops. There we go. So you can see these sides are a wider zigzag because I had to move through it a little bit more liberally, and it's going to serve me to have a narrower artwork. I think that's the end of that video. I hope you watched this one last, because I did not go over in detail some of the things I went through in the other videos. So if you accidentally watched this one first, please watch the other two.